Hello, and welcome back to Kick Butt Turbo Nerds. I'm your best friend, Neil Califf.
And I'm your other best friend, Camden Nikolai.
We're here to kick butts and be nerds, and we're all out of butts. So let's get started with episode 5.
5.
We were off last week. Sorry about that. But the week before was really good. We had an extra person, so I think that kind of makes up for it. No?
Yeah,
Probably not.
I had to go back to Ohio, and Neil started class again, so.
Yeah.
Last week was unforeseen circumstances, etc., etc. But
We're back this week.
We back, baby.
We back for episode 5. Let's get into it.
Yeah. Really quickly. So, I'm going to a Greta Van Fleet concert.
Yeah.
2 of them at the end of the month. And I have no idea what I'm wearing. Which is a first for me, because usually I plan out my outfits in my head. And
yeah,
I know
when we went to see Dodie, you had your outfit picked out like months in advance.
I did. It's just how I work, but I have no idea what I'm wearing. Like, none. So I went shopping today to try to see if I could find something. I couldn't. But I was sitting there waiting for my friend Kennedy to get to the mall with me. And this like random guy comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, do you know how to get to Polaris from here?" And I was like, "No," because I don't. And he was like, "Oh, okay. You're looking mighty beautiful today." And I was like,
"Whoa."
All right. And then he was like, "My name's Armand. What's your name?"
Whoa.
I was like, my name's Kim, because because I don't know. And then he goes,
"We've established that," I don't know if we established it on the podcast, but we established in real life that you like lying to people for fun. People that you'll never see again.
Yes, I do. It's my favorite thing. I think it's so funny. There's no consequences to it either. But also, like, weird man talking to me in public. Don't do that. Don't do that. And, like, he was like, "So, what's a fine lady like you doing out here?"
He did not say fine lady, though.
Yes, he did, Neil. Yes, he did. 2 things about that. 1, you don't know me, sir. I could have killed a man. 2, not a lady.
Don't
That's
know
neither
if you're
here
fine,
nor there.
don't know if you're a lady.
But what are you doing over here? As if the mall is like a place only scoundrels go. Like, what? And I was like, just hanging out, man. Like, trying so obviously to get him to go away. And then he goes, "Well, is there a chance that a guy such as myself could get your number?" And I said, "No, I'm married. I'm not married. I'm not married."
Was he wearing a fedora?
No, but he was wearing a Lakers jersey.
That is the other end of the spectrum, but
it is.
Two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, I was like, it's the My Lady of basketball teams.
Yeah.
So I said, "I'm married," and he said, "Oh, very well then," and then carried on his way.
He did not say very well then. There's no...
He did. Neil, I wish that I could explain this man to you, but I can't, and honestly, I won't. So, but that was what happened today, and I just had to sit there and lie to get a man to leave me alone. It was wonderful.
Fun.
Yeah. But there was another time when I was in the airport on the way to see you, and I've never had such an uncomfortable flight in my whole life. I was pressed up against the window, and the guy in the middle seat was manspreading, and then also didn't know how to take off his seatbelt, and so I had to take off his seatbelt for him.
It's
because he started getting
that
like
unintuitive. It's pretty straightforward.
But he like started panicking, so I was just like, "Let me do this for you, sir," because I don't need that. Like, I don't need a grown man having a panic attack about the roller coaster seatbelts of an airplane, you know? So I just did it, and then the lady who was sitting on the outside seat was like, "Wow, you're so smart. What do you do for a living?" And I said, "I'm a surgeon," because I'll never see her again, and it's funny. But yeah, I should make that a topic that I talk about.
Lying to people?
Yeah.
For fun?
That's my interest of the week. Lying to people when it has no consequence. Just because
You
it's
just
a
have
little
like
silly.
a list of every time that you've done it that you can bring, and we can go
you know
through
I
one by
can't
one.
remember things. But I do think it's funny.
We can grab random people off the street. You can lie to them, and we can gauge their reaction.
Yep, or when we went to Disney and I just said it was my birthday, because they're not going to check.
You did do that. But I think that's a pretty common thing, though.
Well, yeah, but... And then I also just wasn't aware of people saying happy birthday to me because I had my headphones on.
And people would be like, "Oh my god, happy birthday!" And you just straight-faced deadpan right past them.
In my huge boots looking terrifying.
It was pretty fun.
Happy birthday! Not
No,
even a nod.
Nothing.
So
Anyway.
It's my turn to start, right?
Yeah, it is your turn to start.
Hell yeah. So... Mine this week is not something I've been into recently, but it's just an overall... It's like an overarching fave of mine from like the past like 2 years. And it's a video game. I don't know why I'm on a gamer kick right now, but I am.
Well, last episode wasn't.
No, but 2 out of the 5 episodes, Neil.
That's true.
Yeah.
We don't have that many episodes, so I guess the percentage is pretty high.
What can I say? I'm a bit of a gamer. Anyways.
What's the game?
The game is Hades, which is so good.
See, we should have had Akiva on the podcast this week.
Well, get him on the horn.
I've tried. He keeps saying he's got nothing to talk about. Akiva is my roommate who's obsessed with Hades.
I find that unbelievable.
So do I.
So I am talking about Hades this week. It's a very good game. I think it won like Game of the Year.
Probably.
So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. It's a very good game.
I still have not played it.
I know, and I'm very upset about it.
I know. It's going to be one of the next ones, that and Breath of the Wild.
I know. But you'd really like it because it has a lot of cool mythology stuff in it that I think other people wouldn't get.
We read Percy Jackson as kids.
We read Percy Jackson.
We get the mythology.
So I get it. Like, I know who they're talking about, actually. But it's also just a game that I think you would really like how it works. So it's a roguelike game. Reminds me a lot of, I don't know if you ever played the Diablo games.
I haven't.
Those are pretty good games. I was very addicted to them for a time just because you keep doing the same thing over and over again, pretty much. And it's the same thing in Hades. It's basically a winding labyrinth through the Underworld where you play as the prince of the Underworld, Zagreus, who's the son of Hades, trying to escape the Underworld. And your reasoning for that is explained in the game. And I won't get into too many spoilers because
Thank you.
I would like for Neil to enjoy to play the game.
This is, yeah. We have to make some sort of... We have to set ground rules for this show and about the things we talk about and what we're going to spoil and what we're going to not spoil. Because if we're going to talk about stories and games and stuff, we got to figure out, for us and for the audience, what's going to be spoiled and what's not. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be talking mostly about stuff that is readily available just by looking up the game on Google. Nothing too kooky or crazy. And I'm not going to get into, like, story, really. I'll get into some aspects of the story that I like, but none of them are spoilery. So,
okay.
For your own peace of mind and for the listeners as well.
Thanks.
Yeah, so there's a lot of cool stuff that I like about this game. One is the kind of money system. There's different types. You have a lot of different currency that you can use for different items. So Charon, the Charon.
Charon. Ferryman.
Charon, Karen. Charon, the ferryman. He is also the shopkeep of different places in the underworld. So he has his own little obol, which are the gold coins. I almost said gold rings, like in Sonic. No, gold coins that you use to buy things throughout your journey. But what I really like about them is because it's a roguelike and a lot of it is grinding through those first few like levels or rooms, especially when you're first getting into the game and kind of figuring out what enemies are worse than others and which weapons you like and whatever, is that he keeps popping up trying to sell you stuff. And your money does not carry over run to run, so it's either spend it or hoard it all till the end and realize that you could have been very much stronger or had a lot of cooler stuff. But then there's also a currency called darkness, which you use by looking in your cool mirror in your room that your cool stepmom gave you, and basically making yourself stronger by spending darkness.
And just staring at yourself in the mirror and working out.
I'm so cool, yeah. Like, one of them I have in my game is the Death Defiance, which is basically like a life, an extra life, and instead of dying when you reach 0 health, it'll bring you back at half health, so you have like a second chance. Just a lot of the items that are in the game are very well thought out. Like, a reward that you can get is the Daedalus Hammer, which will upgrade the weapon that you choose into like having different skill sets. So my favorite weapon in the game is I guess it's the spear, and I have the version that Hades uses as well. And my favorite thing is that it'll do like a whip almost when you're doing your dash attack, and it does so much damage, and it is so OP, and it is so great.
So, let me ask a question. So you've beaten the game before?
Yes.
But you keep replaying it?
Yes.
Why? And what do you do different each time?
Well, one, because even if you quote-unquote beat one playthrough, you're not done with the story. So you have to, I guess the best word for it is beat the game multiple times in order to finish the story. And then even then, there's a lot of different side quests that you can do to make yourself stronger or to unlock cooler things, like cool ways to design the House of Hades. There's a contractor that you can pay to like spruce up the house in the break room and add posters of people onto your walls in your bedroom, which I think is funny.
Are you just like a teenage boy?
Yes, I think Zagreus would probably be like around our age. Like, if he was a human, like, he's not a grown man, but he's not like a teenager either. He's like a college age guy, and he's just a big sweetie. He's a short king also. Like, you get like a painting of your family, and he's the shortest one there by a long shot. Like, he's so tiny. But yeah, and then there's other items that come in handy. Like, there's keepsakes that you get from the people that you start relationships with. So whether that's Cerberus, the three-headed three-headed dag. Said hound and dog. It was like downed. Three-headed dog that your dad owns, or from your ex-girlfriend or your ex-boyfriend that you can romance and get back together with, or from any of the gods. You can get keepsakes that have their own perks to them. Like, I use the one from Achilles, and that gives you like not immortality, but like impervience to damage for like a certain amount of time after you get hit. And then there's boons that you can get from different gods. So the cool, funny part about you trying to break out of the underworld is that your Olympian family is trying to contact you at the same time. And they think that you want to join them on Olympus. But it's no, you don't.
When you say they're trying to contact you, what does that mean?
It basically means that you get spoken to like a voice of... it's basically like beamed into your head, but we see it on a screen. Oh. But it's canonical that he can't see the gods when they're talking to him. But they'll like tell him about themselves and also like why they had a falling out with Hades, which is nothing new in any Greek mythology story. So, and the boons are probably, I think, my favorite part, because each run is different because each of the boons are randomized. So the gods are randomized from room to room, and the boons are randomized. So each run you have a different god for each room that you go into, and therefore you have different boons. So there have been times where I've been like completely decked out in like the most OP stuff ever. But there's also been times where I'm like stuck with little dinky boons that I would rather not have, but I have to pick because of circumstances. But it's very
So what's the gameplay like?
The gameplay is roguelike.
Like, you're just running through,
Yeah.
fighting stuff.
Yep. And, like, there's a set amount of enemies per room that you kill off, and then it unlocks the next door to go into the next chamber. And then each kind of area of Hades has a boss battle at the end. So for the first one, you fight a Fury. The second one, you fight King Theseus and the Centaur, or the Minotaur, not the Centaur. And then the last, I lied. The first level, you fight a Fury. The second one, you fight the Hydra. And the third one, you fight Theseus and the Minotaur. There we go. And they get obviously harder and harder as you are getting closer and closer to the surface. But the art in the game is also gorgeous.
What exactly is the art style? I feel like I've only seen, like, the box art.
It's all 2D. It's very much reminiscent of, like, I'm trying to think, like, Adventure Time background. Like, hyper-detailed 2D art that is beautiful, but also a little spooky.
Oh, see, yeah, it's all, like, very detailed, almost like digital paintings.
Yeah.
But the character design is almost a little anime.
They're all so hot, too. It's the worst part. I'm like, damn, why am I supposed to fight these guys?
Well, Hades, it seems, doesn't wear... Sorry, what's his name?
Zagreus, the main man?
Zagreus doesn't seem to ever wear a shirt.
He just wears a toga on half of him. His other boob is out. And he also is barefoot all the time because his feet are fiery.
And he's got pointy anime hair.
He does. And honestly, he's allowed. So.
And a big sword.
And a big sword. And a big heart. He's a sweetie. But I thought it was just, like, cool shoes he was wearing. No, those are his feet.
His feet are fire?
His feet are fire.
His feet are fire, dude.
Dude, his feet are fire. But if, like, just looking up the characters from this game, it's so hard to find one that isn't fine. For no reason. All the gods are fine. The guy you play as, hot as hell. Like, even most of the NPCs.
Zeus's beard? No, sorry, Hades, not Zeus. I assumed it was Zeus because it's just a big guy and he's got, like, a leafy crown on, but I think this is Hades. His beard is, like, too...
It's his mustache.
In the big, long...
Much.
It's a mustache?
His mustache.
That's a mustache?
That's his mustache.
Okay. It's just too big, long...
Yeah, it makes a symbol of Hades.
And they just kind of intertwine.
Yep.
They wrap once.
And
then just come back down.
Yep. It makes a
They're
symbol
not, like,
of Hades.
braided.
No.
That's the symbol of Hades.
Yes.
In the game or, like, in real mythology?
I don't know, Neil. I just know it's in the game. It might be real, but I don't know the answer to that, and I'm not going to give an answer that I don't know.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but also you get to pet the dog in this game.
The one with 3 heads?
Yes, the one with 3 heads. There's only one dog in the game, and you do get to pet him. There's also a really cool kind of play on mythology. You befriend a Gorgon, and her name is Dusa, but it's just her head. So,
like a disembodied head?
Yeah, it's just her head floating around. So basically, it's the Medusa who got her head chopped off by Perseus, but it's just her head, and she's the personal, like, housekeeper of Hades.
How is she a housekeeper if she's just a head?
She holds a dustpan with her snake head.
Does she uses her snakes like hands?
Yeah,
like
I guess. I ask her.
I will. You know what?
Hey, Dusa, I got a question for you. But I mean, the character design is wonderful. The voice acting in this game is unmatched. It's so good. The same guy who voices Zagreus also voices his skeleton friend Skelly.
Okay.
Skelly.
So some of this game feels super serious and like hardcore, like dark action video game, and some of it feels a little silly to me.
No, a lot of it is silly. It just has like a hardened exterior. But, like, Zagreus, one, is British, and just monologues to himself, spouting garbage. Like, it's all goofy, and, like, there's definitely some serious parts of it, but a lot of it is just goofy as hell. And I think that's why I like it so much, is because it's a beautiful game. The gameplay is really satisfying. There's a very clear progression of your skills while you're playing, but then there's like a guy named Skelly who lives in your armory, and he's cursed to stand in one place forever, and you just practice fighting on him. And he talks with like a Gilbert Gottfried-like voice. Like, I don't know, he's just there. I don't know. Oh, and Sisyphus is also there. He's not
comic relief?
He's just a person that you can run into. You get to talk to him. He's a fun guy.
How's the soundtrack?
Soundtrack bangs. Orpheus and Eurydice are in this.
Ooh,
and
nice.
Orpheus has this like gorgeous, like high, almost soprano voice.
Ooh.
And him and Eurydice, when they duet, is gorgeous. There's a scene at the end that I won't go into any details because there's a lot of spoilers, but
okay.
It's accompanied by a duet that Orpheus and Eurydice sing together, and it is so beautiful. When I played it for the first time, I cried. I literally cried like a little baby at a video game on my Switch because it's so good and it makes me feel a lot of emotions. I'm like, oh my god, daddy issues? Get this guy in my life. I like this guy. And I'm pointing at Zacharias. I like this guy. I just think he's neat. But
Insert Marge Simpson meme.
I just think he's neat. me carrying Zacharias. But other than like Orpheus and Eurydice music, it's all like old, like lyre inspired, like I think almost like medieval music, but added in with like almost like metal. I don't know how to describe it. It's just sick as hell. It's so good. Like when you start playing it, you'll see what I mean. You'll be like, oh wow, this is just medieval music, but it's sick as hell. Anyways, I think that's all I want to say about it, but
cool.
It's a very good game. I recommend it to anybody who hasn't played.
So then between that and Breath of the Wild, what do I have to play next?
Boy, I don't know. You're an adult.
I'm gonna ask. I want your opinion. You've played both of them. I've played neither. Which one should I play next?
I think you should play Hades next because of one thing. It's easier to like get into, I think. Like you can beat a lot of the game your first run if you are smart about it. Breath of the Wild, you die like instantly, like 8 times.
Oh god.
Like 8 times. Obviously not for like speedrunners or anything, but like if you're like an average Joe like myself or Neil, you're gonna die like 8 times. And that's fine. That's what you're supposed to do in that game. It's an open world game. You just die a bunch of times and then you beat Ganon and then you're like, wow, this is great. But Hades, you can actually, I think the first time that I did a run, I got to the first boss. I did not beat her. Not even close. But I got there, and I was very proud of myself. So, you should play Hades. Yeah.
All right. I will.
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay. That's my topic for this week.
That's a good. I like when you bring me things. I like when you bring me things I know about that I can talk about, and I like when you bring me things that I don't know about that I can go listen to or play or read or whatever.
I like to bring you things and go, here you go.
And I enjoy that. All right.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you. Okay. All right. I did tell you already that I'm kind of taking your part. I feel like this is going to be my version of the Flesh Pit. It's not inherently horror.
Okay.
It's a little spooky.
Do I know about this?
I don't know. I think I've mentioned it to you. I saw it from a video essay on YouTube by a channel called Alt-Shift-X, and it is about a story that was written in the early 2000s by an artist named C.M. Kozman. He's a Turkish artist. He wrote the story, and he did all the illustrations. The story is called All Tomorrows, a billion-year chronicle of the myriad species and mixed fortunes of man. Have you heard of this?
I don't know this.
Okay.
Let's go, Neil. Finding something spooky that I don't know about.
Okay, so basically, he published it originally just online, like as a PDF in like 2006, and it's never been published in like a physical form. Although he said that he like kind of has plans at some point in the future to do that. But he also, I don't know if I would say he loves it, because he's kind of talked about how some of it he looks back on, he finds it a little cringy.
Yeah, I get that.
But eventually, he said he'd like to publish it in a physical form, and he'll have updated illustrations and stuff. But oh my god, the illustrations are half of what makes this. I'm gonna send you. I have like a file of all of the illustrations in order that go with it.
Oh, this is sick.
So I sent you all the pictures. I actually have not. I'm a bad host. I haven't actually read the full story. It's 111 pages, including all the illustrations, and not every page is like a full page. But the PDF is 111 pages. There's a timeline at the beginning. I can link to this. I'll link to the pictures. Basically, the story it's science fiction. It's what they call speculative evolution, and it is a hypothetical future of human evolutions that is set. It starts kind of in the near future-ish, and it goes to, 1 billion years from now. Mm-hmm. And it's about the different evolutions, the different species that evolve from humans, and the different species that they encounter out when they venture from Earth. And I want to kind of just go through some of them. The video that I found, the video is called All Tomorrows, The Future of Humanity, and I'll link to that too, from Alt-Shift-X. And the author, C.M. Kozman, he commented on this video. He's the pinned comment under this YouTube video, and he said, "Thanks so much for giving my work the best YouTube treatment possible. This is a much better narrative artifact than my original PDF ebook. I'm so happy." So,
that's really nice.
Yeah, it's very nice. So I feel okay taking this video as kind of like a good summary of the story. And he mentions in this video about how he doesn't go through everything. There's some things that he doesn't touch on, but overall, it's pretty thorough. But the story starts basically not far from our present, when humans begin colonizing Mars. And it takes centuries for them to terraform Mars. And so what they do first is they send microbes there to create breathable air, and they made oceans from comets. And when it was habitable, then they sent humans to Mars. So he says, I think this is a quote, he says, "The first steps on Mars were taken not by astronauts, but by barefoot children on lush green grass." So
that's nice.
Mars was already terraformed where they got there, right? It's a cool concept to begin
with.
From there, what happens is the human colony on Mars starts to grow and develop, and over hundreds of years, they grow and they coexist with Earth. But eventually, they start to kind of surpass Earth, and tensions between the two planets lead to a war. And it's not this huge, crazy, exciting, glamorous space interplanetary war. It's just machines that they build that fight this very slow war that just causes insane destruction. Mm-hmm. Billions of people die, and humanity almost goes extinct. And so the survivors of this war kind of make a plan to ensure that this will never happen again, and they reform their politics, and they even change themselves. They genetically modify humanity into a new subspecies of people called the Star People, who are supposed to be better and smarter and better adapted for space. So that's kind of how this whole thing starts. And the Star People go out and they start colonizing other star systems, but some of the star systems that they're planning on colonizing are too far. So they create machines that are going to go to these super far star systems that can replicate biological material and create humans there to live there and to colonize these places, which leads to these identity crises, and many of these societies die out or kill each other. But a lot of these colonies survive, and they expand throughout the galaxy, and there's this golden age throughout the galaxy. And as they explore space, they find on different planets, they find different, fossils and evidence of other species. And they find on one planet a fossil that is much closer related to like birds from Earth than anything that they had found living on this planet already. It says that the animals that lived on this planet when they got there have 3 limbs and copper bones, but the bird that they found had 4 limbs and calcium bones, which is much like dinosaurs from Earth. Mm-hmm. So they're like, how did this get from Earth to this planet? And some people think that God did it, and there's this resurgence of religion. Some people think that it was aliens. Some people think that it was, some other civilization out in space that has developed, spacefaring technology millions of years before humans. But in the event that this last one was true, they kind of built weapons to defend themselves, but all of that turned out to be useless because humanity, the remnants of humanity, was attacked by this species of aliens known as the Q. And the Q were basically this nomadic species who migrated through space and had this fanatical religious mission of just decimating all life in the universe in order to create the universe how they desired, and to genetically modify any species that they came upon to suit their will. And so when they came upon humans, they didn't see humans as people. They were just another species to modify how they wanted. And the Q, this insanely powerful species, just used their bioengineering technology to just mutate humanity into thousands of these really bizarre subspecies. And that's where the meat and potatoes of All Tomorrows comes, is because you look at some of the art, and even before we get to the Q, the art and the illustrations of the different ways that humans are evolving up until this point are already fascinating. I don't know if you've been following along.
I have.
In the pictures that I've been sending you, but you can kind of see, it starts with humans that look pretty similar to how we are now, and it shows their spaceship as they go exploring. And then they start to look a little different. The spacefaring humans have, longer bodies and necks and much larger heads. There's an image of this kind of dinosaur bird-looking thing. And then you get to this really freaky, bizarre picture of these worm-looking things. I don't know if you see these.
Yes.
So what's happening here is essentially the Q, when they start modifying humans, they turn them into pets. They turn them into just tools or wild animals, just thousands of these different species for whatever they saw fit. And then they just left. They just left to find their next victims, and they left humanity just completely broken apart and changed into these many races that look nothing like humans used to. And so there's a couple different variations of these humans that this video goes into. And so there's this one world where humans were modified by the Q, and they were just, their hands and feet were turned into tiny little useless appendages, and their eyes were, reduced to pinpricks, and they just were left these elongated creatures who crawled around on the ground, and if they found food, they ate it, and they were just these mindless creatures. And that's what that picture is. But then, over thousands and thousands of years, humanity starts to kind of reemerge. You get a race called the Titans, who were these big, giant things that had kind of these massive arms with these kind of useless fists down at the bottom. But what they did have was this really freaky, long, extended lower lip that kind of functioned like an elephant's trunk. And they could use that kind of as, a hand that they could use to grab stuff with. And they could build homes eventually. They could farm. They created language, and they would tell myths of a long forgotten past. But as this new humanity started to emerge, an ice age hit their planet, and their entire civilization was wiped out. And there were other worlds where you have these predators and this prey who were both human at one point, but the predators were just twisted into these things that have sharp claws and sharp teeth, and the prey are just these herbivores with almost bird-like feet with just nothing going on inside their head. But the predators, who were made to always be on the hunt, kept some spark of intelligence, and this intelligence would kind of reemerge, and their society would come back a little bit. There were other species. There's a species called the mantelopes, who were bred to be singers for the Q and memory retainers for the Q, so they kind of had a bit of their mind left, and they could understand the world around them, but in the bodies that they were stuck in, of these almost like herd animals, they couldn't do anything. So they just roamed the plains singing songs of, sadness.
Crazy.
Yeah. And they created religions and oral traditions around their sadness and their grief until eventually simple-minded mantelopes would survive as well or better than a sad mantelope.
Yeah.
And so within 100,000 years, the world fell silent and they kind of lost their humanity.
Damn.
And there are other races, and I'm not going to go through every single one. There was one race that is one of the most terrifying. It was a race of humans that had kind of rebelled against the Q, and as a punishment, the Q turned them into this species called the colonials, which were these just separate, these disembodied cultures of skin connected by a network of basic nerves, and the Q just used them as tools. They used them as filtering devices that lived off their waste products, and they just were these tools that the Q used for whatever, but they were just lumps of skin with, an eye or a mouth, but they left them their sentience so that they were just alive and conscious and witnessing their fate like this for, 40 million years.
God damn.
And they spread and they covered the planet hoping for extinction, but it never really came. And I think we'll kind of maybe come back to them. But there are all these different races of these new humans that the Q made. There were like mouse-like people who lived underground. There were parasites who lived on other new human species. And then there was a species that came along called the Spacers. Now, the Spacers were not created by the Q. The Spacers were humans who managed to escape into space from the Q, and they built themselves civilizations inside of hollowed-out asteroids. So if you go down past the mouse-looking people and the really tall-looking people...
Okay, hold on.
To the really creepy one with the really long fingers and the, crossed long legs.
Oh, yes, I see him.
Okay. So the Spacers escaped into space and built houses inside of asteroids, and they adapted to zero gravity by growing super long, spindly limbs, and they had these pressurized digestive systems so they could move around by farting from their evolved sphincters.
Cool.
But they eventually evolved to a point where they couldn't return to a planet with gravity, but they were fine in their asteroid worlds, and they didn't really pay attention to any other new human species or any other relatives they had. So there are thousands of these species, some created by the Q, some not, that have now been spread across the galaxy. And some of them evolved, some of them created civilizations that rose and fell, and most of them just died out. And there's a really great quote in here where he says that most of them just died out without the universe ever knowing they existed, which is normal. Extinction is just as natural as speciation. And for each species that died out, new ones evolved to take their place, generating an ever-changing kaleidoscopic variety of life forms. So we get post-humans. The post-humans are basically the intelligent species that evolved from the new humans. We get, from the worm people, we get the snake people, who have these long spiral-shaped brains that allow them to kind of understand their world, and from their ancestors' feet, they kind of evolve a new hand, and they build these series of long, tunnels and homes, and they enjoy books and music played as vibrations in the ground, and while they look alien, their day-to-day is kind of like regular humans. And the predators evolve into a species called the killer folk, who, have this kind of modern society, but it's built around hunting and violence. So their history is just filled with war. And we just get tons and tons of these post-human species. One really cool one were called the tool breeders, who were evolved from a species that escaped the Q by going underwater. And the tool breeders living underwater had no access to, electricity, so they made a new kind of technology. They learned to breed their tools and machines by domesticating and modifying other sea creatures. And they built cities powered entirely by organic life with these massive heart-like creatures that pumped nutrients throughout a network of conduits. And it was just this living civilization of shell and bone and bioluminescent lights, and televisions derived from cephalopod skin and medicinal sea squirts and weapons made from mollusks that fired teeth as ammunition. This kind of stuff. So I'm not the biggest fan of horror in general. We've talked about this, but I like world building.
Yes.
And Flesh Pit is world building, but compared to that, like this is galaxy building. And so this kind of stuff is super cool to me.
Oh yeah, this is like full universe and evolutionary, and there's historical stuff in there. This is really cool. This is like right up my alley. I'm very surprised. I have never heard of this before.
I'm surprised you haven't heard of this either. The video came out in June of last year, so it's not that old.
Because this is like everything that I like in a world building thing. This is what I do with my projects. I go fully into things that are most of the time unnecessary to the story, but this is the whole story.
Right. It's like the Flesh Pit in that it's kind of a bunch of like unrelated things. And also the creepy illustrations
Yes.
remind me a little bit of Flesh Pit.
Yes.
But I'll kind of wrap up the post-humans and what comes after a little bit. But basically, like, you have other races, like the colonials, the ones that were just like flesh, end up figuring out how to build a society where they kind of organize themselves into these modular people, where each different piece forms has a different function and kind of comes together to form this whole. And they build these massive industrial cities, and so all these different post-humans build their own civilizations and start to regain sentience and intelligence, and you have all of them living, on different planets spread out throughout the galaxy. You have one species called the Bug Facers, who evolved intelligence and built a civilization, but they faced a unique threat because they were attacked by some unknown alien civilization. And we don't really know much about this attack, but this conflict kind of scarred them, and it gave them this pathological xenophobic fear of other species. And so eventually the post-humans all try to sort of reach out to each other. The reign of the post-humans lasts for about 80 million years of them expanding from world to world, and eventually they, not wanting to be attacked again, not wanting something like with what happened with the Q to happen again, they kind of all join together. But the Bug Facers, they never join because they were, afraid and xenophobic. And there's also another species, so the Spacers, who are the ones who escaped the Q into space and lived in asteroids, they evolve again. In the void of space, they evolve into this species called the Asteromorphs. And the Asteromorphs, they have these really long, spindly arms that kind of split off into even more thin, just these tiny little grasping limbs, and their legs atrophy and are useless, but their brains keep expanding until their minds and their thoughts are more complex than anything that other humans could ever conceive. And they spread out to every star system in the galaxy, but they don't interfere. They just kind of watch. They have no need for planets. They live in space, and they just silently watch over everything. And so as all of these species are kind of joining up, there's also one other species that doesn't join, and this species is called the Ruin Haunters. The Ruin Haunters, when their world was destroyed by the Q, was not completely destroyed. They had remnants of civilizations that had lived there before them, and so they were able to use some of these ruins to rapidly advance their society, and their technology developed so fast that their social and political structures couldn't keep up, and they almost destroyed themselves in nuclear war, and this drove them crazy, and they convinced themselves that they alone were the ones who were meant to be descended from the star people, and that they deserved to reclaim the golden age of their ancestors, but their sun was rapidly expanding and threatened to destroy them. So they left behind their organic bodies and put their minds into machines, these big floating metal spheres called the gravitals. Or the gravitals are the name of the new species of these floating metal spheres, which retained their human minds and their human ambitions and their human delusions. And so in their narcissistic ideologies, the gravitals started parading through the galaxy, wiping out life, thinking that they were the ones who were meant to be the true descendants of humanity. And they would pull up on planets in this giant massive spaceship that would block out the sun, and if that didn't kill the world, they would just launch an asteroid at the world and destroy it. And they're kind of similar to the Q in that they don't even see species as
People.
They just see them as, bugs to step on. Mm-hmm. So some of these, new humans and post-humans who fought so hard to stay alive and keep evolving were eventually just snuffed out like nothing. But some of the species that they came across, the Gravitals kind of did a little bit of what the Q did, and a little bit worse. And they did a bit of genetic modification as well. And some of these species were so bizarre. Some of them were made into art pieces. Some of them were creatures who were made specifically so that their bodies would only be able to play a certain pop song, and they had modified throats and fingers to just play one single song. And the Gravitals just kind of mashed different things together, and they recycled and repurposed stuff like someone would build a computer out of old parts.
That's crazy.
And they lasted millions of years. But some of the Gravitals, they were different sects. Some of them felt that it was wrong to do this, and they would start creating human life of their own that had intelligence and that could think freely. And some of them even fell in love with their human creations. And as there was this kind of divide amongst the Gravitals, they started looking for a common enemy. And who else is there who was not, subjugated by the Gravitals? The Asteromorphs, who are still out there silently watching. And there was kind of this Cold War between them for a bit, where they were both massively powerful and trying to avoid a war, but in the end, it was kind of inevitable. And there was this conflict that went on for millions of years that destroyed countless star systems. But in the end, the Asteromorphs won, and they defeated the Gravitals, and they toppled their empire, and they tried to clean up the mess that the Gravitals made. They took the surviving humans, and they created habitable worlds for them. And some of them even would come down. They would create kind of lesser versions of themselves, the Asteromorphs, that would live on these planets as kind of like prophets or kings who would steer society in the right direction. And eventually they would, come in contact with other species from throughout the galaxy. There's this snake-like species that, had no relation to the entire saga of human evolution, but still had a history as complex as humanity had. Mm-hmm. And so, there's so much more to this story that I'm not touching on that is even touched on in the video, and there's so much that the video doesn't touch on that's in the story itself. But I kind of want to just read through the last page of the story. I know I've been going for a while, and it's kind of long, but the last page of the story... It's
interesting, though. It's so cool.
It's really interesting. I really encourage... a lot of times at least in the last episode, I pulled a bunch of stories, and I was like, everyone go read these stories. This one, at the very least, look through some of these pictures, watch the video if you can. It's 40 minutes-ish. You don't even need to read the entire story, but I want to just read the last page.
Yeah.
The last page goes like this. I must conclude my words with a confession. Mankind, the very species which I've been chronicling from its terrestrial infancy to its domination of the galaxies, is extinct. All of the beings which you saw on the preceding pages, from the lowly worm to the wind-riding sail people, to the megalomaniac Gravital, to the ultimate galactic citizens, lie 1 billion years dead. We are only beginning to piece the story together. What you read was our best approximation of the truth. Why did they disappear? Perhaps it was a final, unimaginable war of annihilation, one that transcended the very meaning of conflict. Perhaps it was a gradual breakup of the United Galaxies, every race facing their private end slowly afterwards. Or perhaps the wildest theories suggest it was a mass migration to another plane of existence, a journey into somewhere, sometime, something else. But the bottom line is, we honestly don't know. Ultimately, however, what happened to humanity does not matter. Like every other story, it was a temporary one, indeed long, but ultimately ephemeral. It did not have a coherent ending, but then again, it did not need to. The tale of humanity was never its ultimate domination of 1,000 galaxies or its mysterious exit into the unknown. The essence of being human was none of that. Instead, it lay in the radio conversations of the still human machines, in the daily lives of the bizarrely twisted bug-facers, in the endless love songs of the carefree hedonists, the rebellious demonstrations of the first true Martians, in a way, the very life you lead at the moment. Many throughout history were unaware of this most basic fact. The Q, in dreams of an ideal future, distorted the worlds they came across. Later on, the Gravital, with their insane desire to recreate the past, caused the ugliest massacres in the history of the galaxy. Even now, it is sickeningly easy for beings to get lost in false grand narratives, living out completely driven lives in pursuit of non-existent codes, ideals, climaxes, and golden ages. In blindly thinking that their stories serve absolute ends, such creatures almost always end up harming themselves, if not those around them. To those like the misguided, look at the story of man and come to your senses. It is not the destination but the trip that matters. What you do today influences tomorrow, not the other way around. Love today and seize all tomorrows.
He said the title. He said the title.
He said the title. That's how it ends. It ends with the title.
And that last image is sick, too.
And the last image is an image of the author of the story, who is this just unrecognizable shape that, seems vaguely organic, holding a billion-year-old human skull that is, could be any one of us. So that's the story I wanted to talk about. I went on kind of long and kind of on my own, but there is so
I was just
much.
taking it in. It's just so cool. It's the exact kind of thing that I love.
I knew you would. I knew you would. This was one of the first things I knew I wanted to talk about. I kind of wasn't sure when I was going to do it. I knew I needed to watch the video again before I did, but I'm glad I got to talk about this one on here because I really love this one.
This one's really cool. Thank you for showing that to me and to all of our other friends out there. Because that one's really good. I really like that one.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
I got to go play Hades.
Now you got to go play Hades. I got to go, try to scrub my brain of those images before I have to go to sleep.
Yeah, they're really freaky.
It's just like, it's the uncanny
valley. They're unsettling.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really, really unsettling. Some people even go as far as to call it like a form of body horror.
Which I can see. I
understand that, but I wouldn't go that far.
No.
But yeah, it's freaky stuff, but it's cool stuff. I'm glad you liked it.
Cool stuff. Thank you so much.
I hope everybody who listened liked it. Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks to everyone listening.
Yes.
Anyone who made it this far, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram.
TikTok.
At KBTN Podcast. And TikTok. Follow the TikTok. We're posting the little snippets there. Trying to spread it around on there.
And if you have anything that you'd like to send in for us to talk about, go ahead and email us at kbtnpodcast@gmail.com. You could just send a nice letter there, or stuff you'd like us to look into and talk about, or I don't know, some cool recipes.
Send us whatever.
I don't know what
send
you
us
into.
your fan fiction. Send us whatever you want to send.
Please send us your fan fiction. Oh my god, this is a request.
Not about us. I mean, just in general.
No. But it's just, if I have any fan fiction writers out there, send it my way. Send it to me.
Please.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, I also have been meaning to say this. We have a couple listeners who are not from the United States.
Yes.
And some of you, we know who you are, but some of you we don't. And if you are not comfortable, then you don't have to, but we would love to know who you are. If you want to just reach out and say, hey, we would love to say hi back and find out who you are. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I know we have a few listeners that I know of in Australia, but there's a few, especially from Europe, that I don't know where you are, and I don't know who you are, but I see you, and I'm giving you a big
and
old
some people
smooch.
in the U.S. from states that we don't know anyone in. If you're someone who is listening who does not know us personally, and you want to reach out and say hi, please do.
Yeah, please do.
It's very cool for us.
Yeah, especially just starting out. So the fact that it's anybody but our friends and loved ones listening is a little kooky. So, but yeah, continue sharing the show around so that we can spread the love around and encourage people to talk about their interests more. So, yeah.
And until next time, kick some nerd butts.
Turbo style.
Outro music.
Yeah.